Hello, Tony, your deck architect here, back on my channel once more with another deck profile. Wrapping up our coverage of King's Court, the deck profile we will be covering this week will have us revisit the DM era once more as we explore the new support for the Arcana Knights. So to give some background on what the Arcana Knights are a series of monsters that originally was comprised of 3 members, that being King's Knight, Queen's Knight, and Jack's Knight. Piloted by Yami Yugi and debuting in his iconic duel against Kaiba during the Battle City arc, the Arcana Knights were used by the Pharaoh to great extent as a means of putting 3 monsters onto the field quickly to summon out his Egyptian god. From that iconic introduction, the trio would go on to make numerous appearances in later arcs as Yugi would continue to utilize more of their support to creative degrees, including fusing them to create the powerful Arcana Knight Joker. And while this group of monsters has since fallen into competitive obscurity, the introduction of key support in King's Court has breathed new life to this aging trio. Still focusing on the original trio's unique swarming method, the now updated Arcana Knights is one that is geared toward consistently finding ways to put all 3 Musketeers onto the field to then be used for extra deck plays or, thematically, for the summon of an Egyptian god. And despite what many would think of legacy support for a DM era archetype, the new support is surprisingly playable, sporting fantastic recursion and very efficient field generation. Things that I hope to showcase as I get through the deck profile. Anyway, I've droned on enough. Without a further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Starting off our deck is the original trio of monsters in our 3 King's Knight, 2 Queen's Knight, and 2 Jack's Knight. These monsters continue to be the bread and butter of all our plays, capable of putting 3 monsters onto the field with ease. It all starts with our Queen's Knight. Using various means of support, we're going to find a way to special summon out a Queen's Knight onto the field. From there, it continues with our King's Knight. When normal summoned while we control a Queen's Knight, King's Knight can special summon out the 3rd member, Jack's Knight, from the deck, effectively putting 3 monsters onto the field for potential extra deck plays or tribute fodder. Now, despite this huge focus on the original trio, they are undeniably outdated for their times, and as such we do have to be wary of their ratios in the deck. Because both Queens and Jack's Knights are vanilla monsters, they really don't do a lot without outside support, so we're limiting the number of copies we play to 2. Meanwhile, King's Knight is still the main swarming effect monster of the deck, and we could still find ways to apply his effect as long as we could put a Queen's Knight onto the field first, so it's fair to have him at 3 copies. The reason we even bother to play multiple copies of these knights is because the support for them exclusively work with copies from the deck, meaning that drawing into them without additional copies in the deck risks making those cards dead as well, forcing us to play at least 2 copies in the event that we draw into one of either knight. Fortunately, the deck does have natural ways of putting these guys back into the deck, so can at least be assured that we will never run out of copies to play with in the long term, giving us a fantastic grind game. With the original trio of King, Queen, and Jack now introduced, we move on to the new support, starting with our newest knight, Joker's Knight. So in poker, it was commonly a rule that the Joker could essentially double as any other card, a wild card to be exact. And fitting this theme, Joker's Knight can special summon himself from the hand by sending any copy of the original trio from the deck to the graveyard to copy its name for the turn, effectively being a wild card for the Arcana Knight deck. Furthermore, during the end phase, if Joker's Knight is in the graveyard, it can return 1 light warrior monster from the graveyard to the deck to add itself back to the hand. So looking at these 2 effects, it's very easy to see some potential uses for this card. Speaking on the first effect, being able to copy the name of the Arcana Knight it sends gives this deck fantastic synergy with the King's Knight, as it can send a Queen's Knight from the deck to the graveyard to copy her name to then have a Queen's Knight on the field for the King's Knight to trigger. Furthermore, being a level 5 light monster that can special summon himself from the hand means that alongside a Jack's Knight, you now have rank 5 plays to go into with options like your Constellar Pleiades. Speaking on the second effect, Joker's Knight's ability to recycle itself while returning a light warrior back into the deck not only assures that we will always have an Arcana Knight in the deck to be used with our other support, but also guarantees that once in circulation, a single Joker's Knight can be continuously used throughout the entire game without loss, giving this card fantastic long-term use. And while we will commonly be shuffling back Arcana Knights with this effect, it's interesting to note that this effect can shuffle back any light warrior monster, meaning that we can shuffle back cards like Constellar Pleiades or even other Joker's Knights as well. This implicitly gives the deck another avenue of grind game as well, allowing us to recycle our support monsters for recursive use throughout the game. Moving on to our next Joker-esque support, we have our 3 Imperial Bower. Imperial Bower functions very similar to something like Rescue Rabbit. While you control no other monsters, Imperial Bower contributes itself to either summon or add 2 King, Queen, or Jack's Knight with different names from each other from the deck. Now unfortunately, due to its effect conditions, there isn't a lot of ways to bring this card out without consuming your normal summon, meaning that there isn't a lot of ways to abuse this card to actually special summon out a Queen's Knight and then add to normal a King's Knight. But the Swamp 2 is still incredibly useful for the deck, giving you just enough bodies to perform some number of extra deck plays. Double unfortunately though is the fact that he can't use its effect while you control other monsters, meaning that he does become dead past turn 1. But the potential playmaking ability he provides makes him a fantastic starting play nonetheless to really get our deck rolling. Wrapping up our Arcana Knights, we have the new boss monster for the deck in our 1 Arcana Triumph Joker. Triumph Joker comes packing with a nifty effect to special summon herself from the hand or graveyard by sending 1 King, Queen, and Jack's Knight we control to the graveyard. While on the field, Triumph Joker's attack is equal to the total number of cards in either player's hand times 500, and she can also send a card from the hand to the graveyard to destroy all face-up cards that our opponent controls of the same card type. In terms of being a boss monster, Arcana Triumph Joker meets a few important standards. Firstly, having her own special summon effect that works from hand or graveyard means that we can easily go into her without limitations like normal summons or outside support. Secondly, the fact that she gains attack from both our opponent and our own hands means that she actively punishes our opponent for accruing resources in hand while putting less pressure on us to maintain ours. Finally, the fact that her field nuke is not once per turn combos fantastically with cards like Joker's Knight, as we can pitch any number of these recycling cards to nuke the field several times over while never really giving up any advantage. And while she may not necessarily be a win con for the deck, the fact that she can be easy set up with other upcoming support makes her a fantastic option to go into at any point in the game to reset the board and go for heavy damage. Finally, finishing up our monsters, we have the 1 Infernoble Knight Renaud that we will use in Isolde combos, as this is a warrior deck, as well as the Psyframe Gear Gamma package. With cards like Imperial Bower as well as other upcoming support, you'll find that a lot of our big plays will involve initially controlling no monsters. This in turn fits well with Gamma, as you can use it to answer hand traps that would stop these big plays while putting more bodies onto the field for more extra deck fodder. Going into the spells, we begin with the most important spell in our deck in our 3 Joker Straight. Joker Straight is a normal spell card that when resolving will have you discard a card from your hand to special summon out a Queen's Knight from your deck, then add a King or Jack's Knight from the deck to your hand, and then perform a normal summon of a monster. Now doing so will lock you into light warriors from the X deck for the rest of the turn, but given the chain of events, it's pretty easy to see what this card is trying to do. The idea behind this card is to summon out your Queen's Knight, to then add a King's Knight, to then normal summon said King's Knight to trigger its effect to summon out a Jack's Knight, essentially putting all 3 monsters onto the field directly from the deck. And since this normal summon is separate from your turn given normal summon, you are still free to then normal summon something else to continue your plays from there, potentially allowing you to tribute all 3 to summon out an Egyptian god, or even put more monsters onto the field for link plays. Unfortunately, the extra deck limitation to only light warriors does limit your options for extra deck plays, but you'll find that this deck has ways to work with and around this condition to still build some pretty impressive boards. On top of its powerful effect, Joker's Straight also has the same graveyard effect as our Joker's Knight, in that it could shuffle back a light warrior to add itself back to the hand during the end phase. This effect on Straight is very powerful as it guarantees the ability to swarm 3 every turn to ensure you always have a play when your next turn rolls around. Combined with your Joker's Knight, it also guarantees that you can cycle 2 Arcana Knight monsters every turn, a useful feature given how Joker Straight can burn through your Arcana Knights very quickly. Our next spell on the list is our 3 Face Card Fusion. Face Card Fusion allows us to fusion summon any Light Warrior fusion monster using monsters from our hand or field as material. If we were to control a King, Queen, or Jack's Knight, however, we can also fuse one monster from the deck as well. So the idea that I think everyone jumped to when they saw this card was to use Face Card Fusion to make Arcana Knight Joker, which is a valid conclusion given the deck in question. But I want to make clear that this card can be used to make any Light Warrior fusion monster, with the potential to use any monster form material from the deck as long as you control a King, Queen, or Jack's Knight. This means that 1. You can make other options beyond Arcana Knight Joker that are much easier to make and more functional, and 2. You don't have to use the King, Queen, or Jack's Knight you control as the material, giving you more flexibility in fusing hand or deck cards to produce a fusion monster. Now, the specific options that we have will be discussed in the extra deck section, but I really think people are sleeping on the potential this card has to not only put up powerful beaters, but to set up your graveyard as well. And I hope to showcase some of that potential when we get to the combo component. Finishing off the spell lineup, we start once again with the return of our 3 Pot of Prosperity. Now, I experimented playing with cards like Extravagance as well, but I quickly realized that this deck really lives and dies by its ability to see cards like Joker Straight or Imperial Bower turn 1, as those cards really help set up your hand and field for future turns. As such, being able to dig 6 cards deep for those cards is very important for this deck. Likewise, playing draw cards is also equally risky, as you can also risk drawing into things like your vanilla Arcana Knights that you'd rather want in the deck, making Prosperity much safer compared to Extravagance. Following that up, we have 3 Forbidden Droplets as well. Given the ability of your Joker's Knight and Joker Straight to put themselves back into your hand, you're never really losing out on them when you pitch them for something like Droplets. Furthermore, the fact that they can add themselves back on your end phase ensures that you always have cards going into your opponent's turn to pay for a set droplets as well, giving you powerful disruption on your opponent's turn. Inversely, the fact that droplets gives you another outlet to send said cards also provides them more opportunities to recycle Arcana Knights from your graveyard, presenting you more opportunities to fill your deck to have plays for the following turn. Then, cleaning it all up, we have the 1 Living Fossil for our I Sold plays, as well as the 1 Reinforcement of the Army that we can use to search into our King's Knight or Imperial Bower for plays. Going into the traps, we start with the 3rd Joker-esque card in our 3 Joker's Wild. Joker's Wild, which can only be activated in the main or battle phase, allows you to send 1 spell from your deck that lists King, Queen, and Jack's Knight to copy its effect. This allows you to directly activate your Joker Straight or Face Card Fusion from your deck. And like other Joker cards, Joker's Wild can shuffle back 1 Light Warrior monster from your graveyard to the deck to add itself back to the hand during the end phase. Now, there are some very interesting things that you can do with Joker's Wild. Being a copy of whatever spell you send, Joker's Wild is essentially 3 more copies of either Joker Straight or Face Card Fusion. Being a trap card, however, also means that you can utilize the effects of either card as a quick effect to do some cool things. For example, I can activate Wild to copy Face Card Fusion in my battle phase to turn my Arcana Knights into a fusion for extra damage. Inversely, I can activate Wild to copy Straight at the end of my opponent's main phase, so that going into my turn, I start with 3 monsters but no restrictions, allowing me powerful link climbing plays for that turn. Finally, the fact that both Wild and the card it could send in Joker Straight both have recycling effects are huge, as you can dump Straight to put it into circulation for the rest of the game, while also giving you 2 recycles of Arcana Knights for that turn for setup as well. Finally, wrapping up the traps, we have 2 Paleozoic Diamiscus that we play for disruption in the similar logic of why we play droplets, as well as 2 Trap Trick to grab either trap from the deck for added consistency. Going into the X deck, we have two Constellar Pleiades that we can make using a Jack and a Joker's Knight, one Predaplant Verte Anacana to copy our face card fusion, a Nightmare package consisting of one Nightmare Cerberus, two Nightmare Phoenix, as well as one Nightmare Unicorn that we can access into removal, one access code Talker that we can link climb into for game, two I Sold for our combos with Living Fossil and Renaud, two Arcana Extra Joker as our default link to go into while under Joker Street limitation, one Arcana Joker as a powerful beater that we can make using our face card fusion, and then two Idotin the Conqueror Star as our primary fusion target for face card fusion. So for those unknown to what Idotin the Conqueror Star is, because it is a rather obscure card, Idotin is a level 10 fusion monster that can be made using any two level 5 or higher warrior monsters. When summoned, he can add any level 5 warrior from your deck to your hand, and once per turn, he can discard any number of cards to increase his attack by 200 for each. Furthermore, should he battle a monster with a level less or equal to his, that monster's attack is dropped to 0. So there's a few cool synergies that this card has with the Arcana Knight deck and face card fusion. The first is its summoning conditions. Being able to be made with any two level 5 or higher warriors means that you can not only use cards like your Jack's Knight and Joker's Knight to summon Idotin, but also your Arcana Triumph Joker as well. And since face card fusion allows you to use one card from your deck as long as you control a King, Queen, or Jack's Knight, it means that controlling either Jack or Joker's Knight copying an Arcana Knight allows you to use the Triumph Joker in your deck to make this guy, not only putting a 3k body on the field, but also setting up Triumph Joker for later in the game. Secondly, the on-summon search effect. As it so conveniently works out, Joker's Knight is a level 5 warrior monster, meaning that Idotin gives you a neat way to search into it. And given the ease of cards like Imperial Bower or Joker Straight to put Jack's Knight onto the field, it's very easy to convert that Jack's Knight with a face card fusion into an Idotin to not only set up the Triumph Joker, but to also grab a Joker's Knight if you didn't have one already. Finally is its battle effect. Being another discard outlet, Idotin gives you another way of pitching your Joker's card from your hand to the graveyard to set up the recycle effects. This is sweetened by the fact that in doing so, Idotin can also get very big. Comboed with his attack dropping effect, it's quite easy for you to put big damage on board with this card alongside something like an access code to go for very easy OTKs through big monsters. Now it's at this point that we reach the combo component for our deck profile. And for this combo component, I have two combos to showcase. The first will be a one card combo involving our Imperial Bower that can end up on easy setup for our deck, and the second will have us try to do the best we can with a test hand to build the best board possible. With that being said, the field is ready, the deck is shuffled, let us begin. Starting things off with our set combo, this set combo requires that we open an Imperial Bower and ends up on an amazing setup for our deck by putting the Arcana Triumph Joker from our deck to the graveyard to be revived later, adding two Joker's Knight from our deck to our hand, as well as putting 3 monsters onto the field, including one of them being the powerful Idotin. The way that this combo is going to work is I'm going to start by normal summoning out that Imperial Bower, of which I'll tribute it to summon out 2 Arcana Knights from my deck. One of them being any Arcana Knight of my choice, but the second one being specifically a King's Knight. See, one of the other reasons we are playing 3 King's Knight is because in certain combos, one of our knights may be banished for the effect of our Living Fossil, and as such, it does serve to be beneficial for us to have an additional copy of one of these knights to be our fall guy for those combos, in this case being our 3 of King's Knight. Regardless, we're going to link both of these monsters away to summon out our I Sold from our X deck, of which I Sold search effect will first activate to add an Arcana Triumph Joker from our deck to our hand. From there, we're going to activate I Sold's effect, sending a Living Fossil from our deck to the graveyard to summon out a Renaud to the field, of which Renaud's effect will then activate to add our Living Fossil to our hand. I'm then going to activate said Living Fossil to revive back the King's Knight from our graveyard onto the field, of which I'll then link away the I Sold as well as the Renaud to summon out a Verte Anaconda. I'm then going to activate Verte Anaconda's effect, sending a face card fusion from the deck to the graveyard to copy its effect, and since I control a King's Knight, I'm now free to use the deck on top of my hand and field to make my fusion monster. So I'm going to use the Arcana Triumph Joker in my hand, as well as a Joker's Knight from my deck to summon out the Idotin. Once Idoten is summoned, Idoten's effect will trigger, allowing me to add a second Joker's Knight from my deck to my hand. And during the end phase, I can then activate the effect of the Joker's Knight in my graveyard, shuffling back the remaining Knight in my graveyard to the deck to add it back to the hand. Thus ending up on 3 monsters, one of them being my Idoten, the Arcana Triumph Joker in the graveyard to be revived later, as well as 2 Joker's Knight in my hand to be summoned on the following turn. Going into our test hand, the hand that we're going to be working with is going to consist of 1 face card fusion, 1 King's Knight, 1 Forbidden Droplets, 1 Joker's Wild, as well as 1 face card fusion. Okay, so this hand up until the Joker straight was absolutely unplayable, but with this Joker straight, this hand is actually a full house. So let's see what we can do with this hand. I'm going to start by activating this Joker straight, sending the Joker's Wild from my hand to the graveyard to summon out all 3 of my Knights. I'm going to special summon out my Queen's Knight, then add a King's Knight from my deck to my hand, of which I get to normal summon to trigger that King's Knight's effect to summon out my Jack's Knight. From there, since I haven't used my turn given normal summon, I'm then going to normal summon the other King's Knight and use its effect to summon out my Jack's Knight. Then I'm going to activate the face card fusion, fusing the Jack's Knight from my field as well as the Arcana Triumph Joker from my deck, both being level 5 or higher warriors, to summon out an Idoten, of which Idoten will then trigger, allowing me to add a Joker's Knight from my deck to my hand. Then I'm going to link away both the King's Knight as well as the Queen's Knight to summon out my Isolde, of which Isolde's effect will then activate, allowing me to add pretty much any warrior monster that I don't want to use this turn. In this case, let's say an Imperial Bower. From there, I'm going to activate Isolde's other effect, sending the Living Fossil from my deck to the graveyard to summon out the Renaud from my deck onto the field, of which Renaud's effect will then activate, giving me back the Living Fossil. Then we're going to link away the King's Knight, the Isolde, as well as the Renaud, being 3 warriors with different names, to summon out our Arcana Extra Joker, giving us targeting protection. Finally, I'm then going to special summon out the Joker's Knight onto the field by sending another Arcana Knight, in this case being our last Queen's Knight, from our deck to the graveyard, of which I'll then overlay with the remaining Jack's Knight to summon out our Pleiades. Finally, I'm going to set the Forbidden Droplets, and then in the end phase, I'm going to deactivate the effect of both my Joker Straight as well as my Joker's Wild, adding them back to my hand by shuffling back a Queen's Knight as well as a Jack's Knight into the deck, of which I'll then pass turn to my opponent. Going into our opponent's turn, let's do a quick head count of what we ended up with. First off, thanks to the fact that we both have a monster spell and trap in our hand, Arcana Extra Joker can discard any of those cards to protect itself or any of the monsters it points to from a targeted effect of that type, thus giving us targeting protection from a singular effect. On top of that, we have a Constellar Pleiades, which can bounce any card, as well as an Idoten that's 3k but can run over any monster that has a level equal or less than. Finally, since we have so many cards in hand, many of which can go back into our hand later on, we can activate this Forbidden Droplet, potentially sending almost everything in our hand to negate an entire field, giving us incredible disruption. And if we keep this Joker straight, whatever we top deck on the following turn can then summon 3 Knights onto the field, of which we can use to bring back our Arcana Triumph Joker to nuke the field to then go in for game, thus giving us an easy OTK on the following turn. And that's going to do it for our Arcana Knight deck profile. So, what do I think about the deck? Well, the deck is incredibly playable. With cards like Joker's Straight and Joker's Knight that actively make it very easy for you to set up the trio, it's incredibly easy for you to put up big boards of big beaters to overwhelm your opponent. The problem with that, however, is that none of those beaters provide you any incredible disruptive power. While Idoten is strong and Pleiades is useful, neither give you enough disruption to really contend with the current meta of Tri-Brigades and Drytrons. So don't expect this deck to be topping any tables outside of your local tabletop games. But regardless, this has been Tony, your deck architect, with an Arcana Knight deck profile.